Whenever former Prime Minister Mbabazi has been asked why he decided to run for presidency, yet he held various senior positions in President Yoweri Museveni's government for about 3 decades. This has been his response.
Abo ababuuza nti gwe omaze mu myaka mmeka mu gavumenti mbadde nkola delegated post.
Abadde akolera ku buyinza bwokka pulezidenti bwamukkiriza okukola.
Mutegede mbadde nkolera ku buyinza bwange obwampadde pulezidenti atayagala ate kikolwa.
But Mbabazi will have to do a lot more convincing to win over his critics. This is because at one point he held the enviable tag of Super Minister when he concurrently served as Attorney General and State Minister for Defense, headed the External Security Organization, was Prime Minister for 3 years, and Secretary General of the ruling NRM Party for about 9 years. Mbabazi, who is yet to release his manifesto for the 2016 presidential election, says key among his programs are good governance, abolition of direct taxes on goods, fighting corruption, and establishing a fund for Luwero Bushwo veterans. But a senior political science don at Makerere University, Professor Julius Kiza, says Mbabazi had the power to move things well in government.
It is semi-authoritarian administration, which is what we have had over the last 3 decades. Power is centralized. And so when power is centralized to the very top office in the land, it is possible that certain officials will not have substantial control over final decisions, final policies, final laws. But unfortunately for Amama, he was so close to the top that it appears that most of the powers for the executive functions were delegated to him as a super minister, as a prime minister, as a top official of the ruling party.
He also wonders why he didn't speak out against the apparent government failure to tackle corruption and other shortcomings.
Under the principle of the collective responsibility of ministers, if you fundamentally disagree with the policy position of your colleagues in cabinet, what you do is either to accept the decision and defend it with all your power, with all your strength, with all your knowledge. Or if you fundamentally disagree, you resign. So when you resign, then you are not held responsible. But Amama is not known to have resigned.
Mbabazi, a confidant of President Museveni for about 40 years, received strong support from the president in 2008 when he was linked to the Temangolo land scandal. He was later exonerated. The president also backed him in 2011 at the height of the oil bribery claims. Mbabazi was also cleared of any wrongdoing. Addressing his second campaign rally in Mukono, Mbabazi claimed that he parted ways with President Museveni after speaking out for good governance and questioning the rate and pace of service delivery. But Democratic Party President Norbert Mao, who is now Mbabazi's lead campaigner, says President Museveni's style of leadership is stifling and limits the capacity of many of his juniors to exploit their full potential.
President Museveni is a micromanager. So Museveni gives power to someone else, but he puts someone else in the office. So probably the Right Honorable Amama Mbabazi, like many others, was in office without being in power.
But constitutional lawyer Oscar Chika argues that the constitution gave enough powers to Mbabazi as minister and later prime minister.
In his position, he had supervisory powers over the rest of his colleagues in cabinet because he was chairing cabinet. But make no mistake about it, he was still responsible and answerable to the president. With the president, then all you do is it's a very simple thing. Tender a resignation, let somebody else come in, then you can do the rest.
I believe that he had to reach the point of no return. For him, it took longer. For others, their boiling point is lower. I think for him, he has a very high boiling point. So if a man like Amama Mbabazi can boil over, then you know that the heat is too much.
Article 108A of the 1995 Constitution provides for a Prime Minister who shall be appointed by the President with approval of Parliament by simple majority. The nominee shall be a Member of Parliament or anyone else qualified to be elected an MP. The duties of the Prime Minister include being the leader of government business in Parliament and the coordination and implementation of government policies across ministries, departments, and other public institutions. The Premier shall also perform such other functions as may be assigned to him or her by the President or as may be conferred on him or her by the Constitution or by law.
You should be saying, fellow Ugandans, I'm sorry for what went wrong. I was in office, so by omission or commission, there are certain things which should have gone right. That way, a substantial proportion of his listeners will say, okay, now are you the soul who has turned into Paul? Can we therefore trust that you have changed and therefore you are able to move the country ahead by resolving some of the problems, some of the mistakes that you made?
He can take responsibility. I can accept that he can take responsibility as part of the government, collective responsibility. But if he has to apologize, he has got to be responding to specific accusations.
That lists 12 ministries under the Prime Minister's office, including the Ministry of Information and National Guidance, the Ministry for Karamoja, Ministry for Disaster and Preparedness and Refugees, as well as ministries responsible for the development of northern Uganda, Luwero, Teso, and Bunyoro regions. As Prime Minister, Mbabazi oversaw the passing of the controversial Public Order Management Act and the Interception of Communications Act. Shiran Huchere, NTV.